when I initially approached these folks, I asked them to think about anything they think has been important in developing their relationship and how it's led to achieving their missions. So mission was clearly very important. The first question that I would like to ask our panelists is, do you talk on a regular basis?
Do we talk? Formally, probably once a week. Informally, as many as 6 times a week. Sandy's very busy. I'm not as busy, but I am busy. So I interrupt her office all the time. We talk about a lot of different things. She's so busy that sometimes I'm the reprieve she gets from the day-to-day grind. And I consider that a very important role for me. And oftentimes we meet at different meetings. So we talk a lot. And I think in our organization, and especially between she and I, the communication issue is not an issue. It works like a charm.
We speak regularly, often. We have each other on speed dial. We call each other often. We meet weekly, and we have a great communication system, just keeping in touch. And what I love is that we're constantly always just evaluating things and making sure that we both have the information that we need. For me, I look at myself as the liaison for the community and helping to educate our community about the services at Calvert Health and to cultivate those relationships so that obviously we can inspire them to join forces with what we do and you know, obviously make a donation. And so we are always staying in touch with the people that we have relationships with and keeping each other informed how we can best nurture those relationships and further the mission.
I'm Gene Townsend. Yes, we do talk regularly. I would say we at least trade emails at least once a day, sometimes twice. I go by the office maybe once every week, 10 days. So we do meet quite frequently. We exchange a lot of information. I think our strong suits is my background is mostly with the Defense Department, and we tie into that a lot. So if there's something I think Bonnie should know, I pass it to her. Same way with Bonnie. If there's something she finds with PAC server or something that I should know, she passes to me. We try to operate from the same page, basically, is what we try to do.
Another question I had was, do you develop an agenda jointly and do you engage in planning activities together? Sandy, you want to take that one?
Yes, we do. Because we do meet often and we're discussing how we're moving forward. All of our agendas and our programs are developed jointly. It started with our strategic plan and that helped us to kind of keep on task and discussing where we're going to go and how we're going to accomplish some activities. I do want to say when we talked about do we meet regularly and all of that, and Earl responded to that, I have to say that it's been important to me as an executive director to have a board chair that's willing to spend the time with me, willing to let my office be a padded room where we can close the door and he allows me to rant and rave and then calms me down and brings me back to reality. And I don't think that could happen if we didn't have regular meetings that I felt so comfortable to be able to do that. And that leads into our activities and our planning, because then he knows when to say, let's not put that on the agenda. That's not something we should undertake right now. I think Mike Bellis, and I don't know if he's still here, he said he has a tendency to overdo, and I think I have that tendency too. But Earl kind of keeps me in check against my will sometimes, but he does do that. See how he does this?
I think you all should know that nobody keeps Sandy in check. Nobody. You compromise and you work at it. What I want to talk about, the agenda, everybody in this room understands you can develop an agenda on Monday for a meeting the following Monday, and that agenda is going to change. Because in the nonprofit world, things come up that you didn't plan for, or you did, but it was supposed to happen 3 months from now. So that working together and developing a joint agenda allows us also to be flexible.
Thank you.
I I just want to say that with Lynette, it's been interesting coming on board. The one thing when I was thinking about doing this, the one word that came to mind is that she's a strategic thought partner for me, because she's looking strategically at what's going out in the community. You know, as an ED, we're in the daily grind of, you know, making everything work and making sure that everything comes together. And I think just having a strategic partner and her availability, I think if I had one thing to say, availability is crucial. When Lynette stepped up a year and a half ago, to board president and chair, it was obvious that she took it very seriously because she stepped down from a lot of other activities that she was leading. And I think as an ED, you can appreciate that, because availability, being able to talk to them, pick up the phone, have a text conversation, an email, whatever it takes, because when you leave a meeting, sometimes you need to immediately get into the ear of the board chair, and you need that support. And it's been critical in our planning process. So when you're planning agendas, you know exactly how to manage things, how things will go at a board meeting or just in the community. And I think that I've appreciated that a lot. Oh, she wants my turn.
Thank you, Teresa. When it comes to planning the agenda, we both definitely, am I talking too close? Too loud?
I think you're fine.
We're all vibrating. I definitely think that we both work together for the agenda because we come from a different thought process. Teresa's in it, and she has that responsibility as an employee, you know, of the system. And for me, I'm always thinking about the rest of the board members. Do they know what we're talking about? Because board members roll off, new ones come on, and I feel that my job as the leader of the board is to make sure that all of our board members have all the tools that they need to be successful, to feel inspired and motivated, and to be excited about serving. And so as Teresa, you know, comes to the hospital with such a great wealth of information, education, and skills, I feel like I help translate all of that knowledge, and I kind of bring it down to the regular people stage so that we can all know what's going on. Honestly, like she just said ED, and for a minute I was like, okay, what's ED? Oh, that. So yes, we work together, and again, we're both strategic thinkers, but we come from different places, and I think that together we get the job done.
Gene talked about the fact that we communicate regularly. He does come in probably more than once a week sometimes, but we share common goals. We know where we're going as an organization, and like everyone else here has talked about, sometimes we're surprised, sometimes there's information that then we share with our board members because we want them to be informed before we have our next board meeting. So we have what Gene calls goal congruence. We are going in the same direction and not working at cross purposes. So that ongoing dialogue and communication and making sure that nobody's surprised by what's going on, I think contribute greatly to the success of our organization.
Well said.
I don't know about those of you who are here, but I've gone to many, many sessions on how to recruit board members. So I wondered, how do you recruit board members?
Well, in the past, we recruited members through word of mouth, social media, and other things. We have since started taking a more targeted approach to recruitment because we found that board members that stay with us are those that have a passion for what we're doing, but they bring a certain skill to our organization. And so it's worth the time and the effort to target the board members we need for where the organization is, but also where it's going. And so we've identified areas that we needed to have board members that had the expertise in, and at this point, we're really targeting those board members. And I have some applications with me today, right at the table, and anyone that's interested, please talk to us.
Thanks.
So, I am very, very picky about board members. I have a 5-year plan. we've got names ready, for the ones that roll off who are going to be replaced. I work very hard to make sure that we have an eclectic board, that we have representation from every part of the community. For me, I don't need to know all the answers. I just need to know where to go to get the answers. So I surround myself with people in different areas of expertise that I know will help make our board well-rounded and serve the hospital in the best way possible.
Yeah, we basically also target certain people for the board, but we also have a list of people that come to us who would like to be on the board. In some cases, we take those people and ask them to initially serve on a committee. So that's a good way to test and see what they really would be like. So that seems to work in some cases also.
We, as Jean mentioned, we do ask people to get engaged in our committees and activities to see, first of all, whether they are willing to devote the time and energy, as well as to see whether they're a good fit. We have a board governance committee, and this committee reviews candidates for our board, as well as bylaws and policies and so forth, so that people understand that if you want to be part of our organization, we have certain expectations, and annually we'll talk about how that went and the time commitments for board participation in meetings, as well as the programs and activities that we sponsor through the year. So we have sometimes had people who bring skill sets that don't really fit what we're doing, and sometimes by getting them engaged in other areas, they come to understand that, or they realize that maybe this isn't the right place for them. So it's an ongoing activity. We're at different places in our careers and in our commitment to organizations. And at one of the earlier sessions I attended today, we talked about the fact that generally successful boards have members who are active in various other boards. That's why you ask busy people to do work. So that cultivation comes as well from our members. And there are a lot of ways to look at that, and we try to take it all into consideration and then have our board governance committee sift through that. We do have our board president sit on all those committees so that he's able to provide some expertise. And if he hasn't taught them, had them work for him, had them be in the Boy Scout troop that he used to run. So we have a lot of other connections in the community as well.
Thank you. How does your relationship help you to resolve any kinds of conflicts that come up in either the board itself or in dealing with your staff or in the community at large? Does the relationship have an impact on that?
I think it does. I think Bonnie and I can say most anything to each other. We don't take anything personally. So, we can start from that standpoint. And I think it works well, but that we can able to say what we have on our mind. And we know that both of us are working for the betterment of the organization.
I believe the most important thing between the chair and the executive director is trust. You have to have transparency. You have to be able to be open and share information. And at times, get in a padded room and talk each other off the ledge. It's just what we have to do. And I trust Teresa very, very much. I can say anything to her. I know it will stay private because let's face it, we all have days that are a little challenging and sometimes we're looking at things and we might need another perspective so that we can kind of get our head back in the game. I need that more than she does, but she's always there for me and I love it and I learned so much from her. So I definitely think trust, transparency, and respect is absolutely the most important. Do you want to add anything? No, okay.
Let me say amen to that. The trust, transparency, that's extremely important. Let me talk about conflicts within the community itself. I belong to a lot of different organizations in this community. Sandy belongs to that times two. So between us, we travel the community and we get to share. I could hear something at meeting A, hear something at B, and they contradict each other. But we're able to talk it out and figure out what position do we have and how do we want to promote that position. And for 5 years, that's worked like a charm. Do we always make the right decision? Absolutely not. You don't see any halos around either one of us. But the bottom line is we talk it out, we understand, and if it doesn't work, we understand it, and we go back and redo it.
And just to add, when we do make a decision that we don't feel it was the right one, we're wrong together. So that is, yeah. So that's always helpful as well. As you know, as Earl says, we're traveling in a lot of different circles. You can leave one meeting and go to another, and you hear something totally different from the first meeting you went to. But it's good to be able to say, this is what we're going to be involved in. This is what we're not. We've said more times than not, step away and let it settle. It'll come out later. We're not going to worry about it. So having to make those decisions. I will say it's the trust factor is really important as we move along. And it took me a while to get to that with dealing with anyone. I am a founder as well, so it's a horrible place to be. Because you had to have someone that's able to have a business sense to separate the passion from the business. I found someone with a business sense that is passionate but has a business mind and was able to separate my passion from the business and be able to have us move forward. That is the driving force in solving anything when we move forward. And as a founder, it's always challenging because, you know, and for many of you in the room, you feel that you've gotten this vision. For me, I felt that was a God-given vision and I needed to act on it. But I needed somebody that I could trust, that understood the vision, that could help me get through some of the challenges and conflicts and other things that would come about. And I think it's my faith that Earl came along. And he's been able to hold me up when I needed to, been able to resolve a lot of things, been able to help the staff get through some things. And I tell people I get a twofer because his wife is a therapist, so when the staff and everyone needs things, I can go to Lynette and get the help that I need. So I think it's really important. And I appreciate you guys bringing the chairs and the EDs together because there is no separation in a good organization. They have to be a pair in operating. So thank you.
Sure.
Sorry. Just speaking about conflict, another thing I think is also very important, but it really goes back to the respect. When Teresa and I are working on an agenda and we have issues that we know that will be, you know, coming up at a meeting, we talk all of those through and we make sure that we are unified on the same page before we go to the boardroom. It's important. I need to make sure that I have educated myself and we talk it out. And we're not always on the same page, but we get there before we get to the boardroom. And I just think that's important because we are showing our board that we have a good connection and we're here for them.
As also a founding member of the PACS Partnership for more than 20 years ago, I was asked by the county government to be the Navy rep on the startup organization. So you do have, so I have some kind of buy-in to the organization from that viewpoint. But I agree, trust is the only thing that matters in any relationship or anything you do. If you don't have that, you have nothing. The other thing is, I think Bonnie and I know that we got each other's back. So anything that I need help for, or vice versa. So it's a good relationship.
Is there anything in particular that I haven't asked you that you think has helped the two of you to propel your organizations forward?
One of the things that I've really gained in working with Jean as the board chair is how better to connect the dots in the community. How can the work that we do support STEM outreach, support other organizations, even that are outside of our swim lane. So we have a holiday open house. We collect food and donations for the food pantry. Members of our organization who support organizations from the Rotary to a soup kitchen look for us to live our values throughout the community, and that's what we have with our members and within our board. So the further that we can, the more that we can grow our connections, the better we can serve the community and our mission, as well as make it a better place for everyone, and that's really important to us.
And I agree about the connecting the dots. That's the most important thing. Is there's a lot of things that you can connect over here to there. And so it's just a matter of having relationships. The only thing that really works in any business, nonprofit, is relationships with other people and trust that they have with you. So the idea is to be able to do that. Bonnie has great relationships with, I'd like to, in fact, I've said to some people I'd kill for her Rolodex. And most people don't know what that is, but she basically has a lot of connections that I can't even get near, but at the same time, I have connections that she doesn't. So we kind of cover the whole waterfront. And so there's, Holly, no one that we can't get to talk to about anything on the PAX partnership.
One thing I wanted to add is that normally you get board members and they're, you know, if you're lucky, they're an asker, that they can help you make the ask. You have advocates, and then you also have those there that might just be there for attendance, and those are all great. And I think that they all have their place on a board. But I do think that when you have a board chair, the passion and having, you know, they are going to attend, they're going to show up, but they're also going to be there to help make that ask. I think that that's probably the critical thing for executive directors, for board members, is that you can actually do twice the amount of work because you're, you know, while sometimes you're doing it together, sometimes you're doing it separately. And I think that that's critical for us, just being able to tap into the skills of your board members and ensure that you're putting them on the right. I think you mentioned governance and operations. So we have committees as well. Putting them on the right committee and kind of shuffling that up sometimes is necessary. And I think that that's where we've done a good job in trying to look for what is the forte of the board member and knowing what they're there for in order to make that more beneficial for the organization.
I also think that there's things that we as the chair can do as a volunteer that the ED can't do. And that's going to people in the community and asking you to donate to the cause that we believe so much in, because I already did it myself. I'm not asking you to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. So I think that's an important partnership there.
Lynette, I want to follow that up with another question to all of you, or if anybody who wants to address it. Earlier today, we had 2 presentations on developing relationships with elected officials. One was elected officials and one was building your constituency. And I wondered if you collaborate on doing those things, and does one take the lead and the other one doesn't, or how do you divide that up?
Depends on the relationship. So I really do think that it's about who has the relationship and what is the goal.
And sometimes we tag team them.
The political, in all fairness, I work with Senator Middleton. I'm his chairman, his co-chair and treasurer. I've developed over the years a working relationship with most of the community leaders. What I know and what Sandy knows is a perfect development, because she develops the same relationships. So again, we can talk to one political leader and she can talk to another, and we might get 2 different versions. And you're going, oh really? That's normal, isn't it? It depends upon where you are, it depends upon what you're asking, and it depends on what you're looking for. So I think if you don't establish some relationship with the community leaders, the political leaders, you're really missing out. Because these folks pass the money down if you have any money coming. They make decisions that can impact your organization terribly quickly. We just built a foster child house for Department of Social Services. Thank goodness President Peter Murphy stepped in and it happened. Up until that time, it was not going to happen. But Therese Wolf and I worked hard at that, and it came off, and Therese did a marvelous job. So I think develop those relationships. And I realize there's a normal flux. We got a lot of people going to change this year in Charles County. I get that. And you may not like them, and you may love them, but you're going to have to work with them, so just do it.
I do say that there's a balance, and I'm not always politically correct, because I'm a grassroots person. I came from a service and program background. I'm about seeing people get housed, sheltered, fed, that type of thing. And that's my mission. That's what I'm about. So sometimes the politics don't necessarily drive me, except I know that politicians have well, our legislators have a place, and they're making decisions. I think our power sometimes comes in the fact that we represent the voice of the people, and I think it's important that they know that we represent that voice, and I think we've earned that through the years to say that we represent the voice. So we have a balance. The knowledge of one politician versus another, parties get into play, and all of that. And I don't deal with that as a nonprofit. I'm dealing with the issues, the services, and how they can be accountable to the people that we serve and the people that they're here to represent. So those relationships have been built upon our knowledge as an organization of who we serve and why we serve them, and the advocates that advocate for the people we serve. And one point is that, you know, many times people see folks that are homeless not having a voice. They feel that they're not voting. But I can tell you, how many of you have heard of Safe Nights? Okay. So that, you know, in one church alone, we have 150 volunteers for the week that we're in that Safe Nights church, okay? Those 150 people have a voice, and they vote. And so when people that are running for office know that we've got 26 churches that have 100 to 150 volunteers, plus the other people that they're in their circles that are hearing about this, that is where that leverage comes in, and that's where we get to have a voice with the people that are representing us, and we have to take advantage of that. So.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on that?
So we have a unique situation. I live in Anne Arundel County. I have an excavating business in Prince George's County, and Calvert Health is in Calvert County. And as my husband says, with regards to politics, we have to feed all the children. And that's because we need to have a relationship so that we can keep our business, you know, moving forward. And so I think all of those relationships are wonderful. My husband and I enjoy politics. We don't necessarily pick the party, we pick the person. And sometimes it's both people, because again, we're in business and we've got employees and we need to make sure they have, you know, job security and so forth. But I think all of those relationships all come together, regardless of what side of the political line they're on, because for us, we're a hospital. You know, we are here to serve you. When you need help, you're going to call an ambulance. You want to go somewhere where you trust. And for me, it's absolutely Calvert Health. And those relationships help us to educate people about the changes that are going on and how we've grown and how we've improved. And it's something to really be proud of.
Thank you. I'm wondering if anyone in the audience has a question for one of our panelists.
I think they've eaten.
Yes, Holly.
I have a question. Just like you guys were talking about how you speak on a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis, what are like the main type of things that you speak on or you talk about?
Could everybody hear that question? The question was, I know you talk to each other a lot, but what are the topics that you talk about?
Oh, I'll start first. First, sometimes it's staffing, employee issues, cash flow. Money's a big discussion in the nonprofit world, especially. Activities that are going on, changes that have happened. Because we operate 24/7 and we deal with different populations, and they're between 5 o'clock last night and this morning at 9, a million things could have transpired. I try to make sure that Earl knows what's happened in case he's out in the community and somebody says, guess what happened? I heard this happen. He has the full story before it happens. Unfortunately, when there's a death or when something happens, I want to make sure he gets that information before he gets out. But it's really, and sometimes it's a wellness check. I think he just stops and test the temperature and see if I'm still alive or what, and seeing what the climate's like. And many times it's just on time, so.
I guess for us, I don't know that we speak daily. I know that we communicate regularly. And I know that a lot of times it's just what you were saying. It's making sure that your board chair is informed, that if something has happened, they need to know before it's out in the community. So those are the things I think we're talking about the most. If there's a board member who needs assistance, those are topics that we would cover. Anything, high-level legislation that's going through healthcare is a big, it's a big topic of conversation. So anything that's coming down that we think we need support, we need someone to advocate for us, I think that those are the things that we're talking about regularly.
So my conversations with Jean might cover a decision on the part of the federal government to take an action on the DoD budget. It might be something that someone has asked us to do as the PACS partnership. It might be a program issue. It could be a community issue. We do a lot of community outreach, and I want to get his perspective before we pursue that discussion, as well as going to our board before we get too far along. Because we are a 501c3, and from time to time, the state or the Navy may want to do something that requires something outside the gate, and they will come to us, and it may not be something that we've ever done before. And before we decide we're going to try to set up a UAS test site, or we're going to build an aviation classroom, or something else that is way out of our swim lane, can we make this work? Does it fit our mission in a broader way? How is it going to benefit our membership, the Navy, and the community? And there's a lot of discussion back and forth, and we have ended up doing some of those really unusual things.
Any other questions? Please.
Yes, I heard Sandy Washington say that money is always a challenge, and it's no secret. But my question is, what is your greatest challenge?
The question is, what is your greatest challenge
In terms of relationships?
in terms of relationships?
I think one of the greatest challenges for organizations is getting younger people involved and having them engaged as board members, as volunteers, get them educated about what matters and why they should be a part of it. That's the biggest challenge for us. I mean, we've made a concerted effort in the past couple of years. We have, a staggered board, and we really did reach out to younger people. Part of what was interesting about that is how some of our board members viewed a younger person. Was that somebody who's 25, or in someone else's case, 35? Well, that's pretty young. Are we going to do that? So that tells you that you really have to make that concerted effort. We work with a young professionals group to get people to be connected, to get them engaged. A lot of the great cultural and community activities are still in the newspaper, but not on social media. So for people who get all their news on social media, you really have to make a major change. We've done that in our community, but for a lot of smaller organizations, that's very difficult. How can we help these organizations get visibility? Because one of the challenges in St. Mary's County and in working with the Navy is they recruit young engineers and scientists from other parts of the country who come to St. Mary's or Calvert or Charles and say, wow, there's just really, I have to go into town, there's nothing to do here. They're not connected, when the reality is you're always making tough choices about what you're going to do on a weekend because there are so many things out there. What can we do to foster that engagement, to make these people become a part of our community and help us all move forward?
Yeah, and I think you hit on a key topic. What are the issues? What are the challenges that fit the mission? And I know at Calvert Health, we've been really successful in starting a Rising Star program. And now what we're doing is, with the young philanthropists that are coming in, we're actually looking at the opioid crisis here in Maryland and across the country, and right here in our backyard. And so really educating young people, young philanthropists that are raising funds out there through their youth organizations, or just, we had someone who did a little lemonade stand, and she came and gave me $1, and I was so happy. But I think it really is. It's a matter of getting them to care about the cause, getting them to care about the mission. And so we're trying to do that with parents and with this opioid crisis, and we just received a $1.7 million grant from the state to revamp our behavioral health unit. And so we're looking to leverage that and fundraise for it as well.
I think with us, it's more of education and the right information getting out. When you talk about relationships, we do more than homelessness, but that's one of the things that comes up when we talk about trying to educate the community on the needs of the homeless. Then we have to define what is homelessness and by whose standards. HUD has one standard, the school system through McKinney-Vento has another standard. There are different things about homelessness. To us, if you don't have a place to lay your head, you're homeless. But to HUD, if you're not on the street homeless or in some place that's uninhabited, should not be inhabited by a human being, that's homeless. And so the numbers vary. So when you reach out to the community to educate the community, to build relationships, and on one hand, we're saying we're serving 1,100 homeless, and then we do a point in time count that is going by HUD standards, and you said you found 170 people that night. People want to know, well, do you have 170 homeless or 1,100 homeless? But so that education and being able to reach enough people to be able to share the information, the correct information, and why there are these variations that exist in what you're saying that in the population you're serving. So the education of our community is important in building those relationships.
Janice, let me make it even more personal. When I talk with Sandy, I have to listen to what Sandy's saying, because sometimes she's saying something that's covering something else that's bothering her. So to me, the relationship is I listen. Do I do a good job of it? Hopefully I do a better job than I think I do. No, okay. Well, forget everything I just said. But I think you said, you know, the challenge of relationships, you have to listen. Whether you're listening to it just a volunteer, in this case we're talking about board chairs and executive directors, I need to hear what she's saying, because sometimes I come in and I say, how you doing? I'm doing fine. You're not acting fine. And all of a sudden, it gushes forward. That breeds what we talk about, trust. But on a personal level, Janice, that's how we maintain our relationship.
Any other questions?
One more question, can we get more than one?
You're it.
For these individuals, are you satisfied with the diversity that you have on your board?
The question is, are you satisfied with the diversity that you have on your board?
Meaning, you talked about young people, that's good to hear. We all want to engage more young people, but you have other dimensions of diversity, so that's my question.
No, I'm not, but it's something that we talk about. It's partly looking at the community and getting those people you might think would add to your board, the diversity, the value proposition of diversity, which is what people don't look at. And part of it is looking at our population and finding those people and getting them to be engaged. A lot of what we do is long-term cultivation. We work with the high schools, the middle schools and the high schools, and even the elementary schools. But this is where you are able to bring in a broader community, a very diverse community, and get them engaged in our organization and continue that with students who have scholarships here at CSM, who hopefully go on to the University of Maryland program at the Regional Higher Education Center. So we're looking at that. It was earth-changing, as I said, just to get someone under 35. We do have some diversity on our board. We have a number of women on our board. Would I like to see broader diversity and inclusion? Yes.
I'm very happy with our diversity. I don't know if this is going to be politically correct, but we've got young people, we've got old people, we've got men, we've got women, we've got black, we've got white, we've got rich, we've got poor. You know, I'm just calling it like it is, you know, and the reason that's so important to me is because each of those people reach a different part of our community. We can't serve our community if we don't have a voice, the ears to hear the voices of what the community needs and wants. And so I'm very happy with our diversity.
And to her credit, she recruited a lot of them.
We have a very diverse board as well. The only, I guess, setback would be we would like to have more participation from people that would utilize our services, and the tendency to have them stay on a board. It just hasn't worked, and so we're working to make sure we keep that input, actually users of the services to be able to be represented on our board. So we're looking more towards that.
I think we have time for one more question. Nora. The question is, do you have anyone with a disability on your board?
Disability is subjective.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't have anyone with a disability on our board at this point.
Oh, I said, yes, we do.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Well,
Excuse me. Sometimes, you know, the disability is not obvious. You have to be very clear about that. I know some folks who have horrible heart conditions, but if you saw them in the hall, you'd never know it. But they have a disability. They can't walk more than like 25 feet without literally being out of breath. So we have to deal with all of that. So it's not just those kinds of disabilities. And being the husband of a mental health person, there are mental disabilities as well.
thank you for the questions. And I also just really want to thank our panelists, and I'd like all of us to thank our panelists.